Imagine a world where empires ruled. Vast territories, stretching across continents, were controlled by distant powers. These empires imposed their will, culture, and economies on the lands they dominated. This was the reality for centuries, a world where the sun never set on some empires. But the middle of the 20th century saw a seismic shift. The winds of change began to blow. The age of empires crumbled, making way for a new era. Decolonization. The old order was being dismantled. Before World War II, only a handful of nations were truly independent. The rest were under colonial rule. Fast forward a few decades, and the map had transformed dramatically. New nations were born. Nearly 200 new countries emerged, proudly claiming their place on the world stage. Independence was celebrated with joy and hope. This wasn't a smooth or uniform process. The road to freedom was fraught with challenges and conflicts. Decolonization was as diverse as the nations themselves. Each movement had its own unique character and struggles. Each country had its own story, its own path to freedom. Leaders emerged, guiding their people towards independence. From the bustling streets of Accra to the crowded cities of Delhi, people rose up. They united in their quest for self-determination. They demanded the right to govern themselves, to shape their own destinies. This is their story, a testament to the enduring human spirit. Africa, a continent rich in resources and culture, bore the brunt of colonial rule. For centuries, its people endured the harsh realities of foreign domination, their lands divided and exploited by European powers. European powers carved it up, exploiting its land and people for their own gain. The continent's vast wealth in minerals, agriculture, and human labor was siphoned off to fuel the ambitions of distant empires. But the winds of change were blowing. The spirit of resistance and the desire for self-determination began to take root in the hearts of many Africans. In 1957, a nation on the Gulf of Guinea became a beacon of hope. Ghana's independence marked the dawn of a new era for Africa. Ghana, led by the charismatic Kwame Nkrumah, became the first sub-Saharan African nation to break free from British rule. Nkrumah's vision and leadership inspired many across the continent. Across the continent, others followed. The wave of independence swept through Africa, with nations rising to reclaim their sovereignty. Kenya, with Jomo Kenyatta at the helm, shook off the shackles of colonialism. Kenyatta's leadership was pivotal in uniting the people towards a common goal. Angola and Mozambique, after years of armed struggle, finally won their independence from Portugal. Their battles were long and arduous, but their determination never wavered. But the road to freedom was often paved with bloodshed. Many lives were lost, and countless families were torn apart in the quest for liberation. Algeria's fight for independence from France was a brutal 8-year war. The conflict was marked by intense violence and significant loss of life. The scars of this conflict are still felt today. The memories of those who fought and the sacrifices made continue to resonate deeply within the nation. Asia too was undergoing its own transformation. India, the jewel in the crown of the British Empire, finally achieved its long-fought independence in 1947. Leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, through non-violent resistance, inspired millions. Indonesia, after centuries of Dutch rule, declared its independence in 1949 following a hard-fought revolution. Sukarno, a fiery nationalist, emerged as the leader of this newly independent nation. Vietnam's struggle for independence from France was a protracted and bloody affair. The decisive victory at Dien Bien Phu in 1954 sent shockwaves across the globe. It showed that even the mightiest empires could be defeated. From the rice paddies of Vietnam to the bustling streets of Calcutta, the message was clear. The age of empires was over. Section 4. The Seeds of Change. Why Empires Crumbled. What were the driving forces behind this momentous shift? Well, World War II played a pivotal role. European powers, exhausted and financially drained by the conflict, were unable to maintain their grip on their colonies. The war also exposed the hypocrisy at the heart of colonialism. How could empires, who claimed to uphold freedom and democracy, deny these very rights to the people they ruled? Nationalist movements, fueled by this hypocrisy, gained momentum across the globe. Leaders like Gandhi, Nkrumah, and Ho Chi Minh emerged, rallying their people around the cause of self-determination. The demand for freedom could no longer be ignored. The empires were crumbling, and a new world order was emerging. Section 5. Different paths to freedom, from peaceful handshakes to bloody battles. Decolonization wasn't a one-size-fits-all process. Some nations like India achieved independence through negotiations and peaceful protests. Others, like Algeria and Vietnam, had to fight bitter wars to wrest control from their colonial rulers. External pressure also played a role. The newly formed United Nations, with its emphasis on self-determination, put pressure on colonial powers to relinquish their control. The methods may have varied, but the goal was the same: freedom. The desire for self-governance, for shaping one's own destiny, proved to be a powerful force. Section 6. The Dawn of Nations. New flags, new challenges. Independence brought with it a wave of euphoria, a sense of hope and possibility. New nations emerged, eager to take their place on the world stage. New flags were raised, new anthems were sung. But freedom came with its own set of challenges. Many newly independent nations struggled to overcome the legacy of colonialism. Economies were often structured to benefit the former rulers, leaving them dependent and vulnerable. Building new institutions from scratch proved to be a daunting task. Internal conflicts and power struggles erupted in some countries, threatening the very fabric of their hard-won independence. The transition from colony to nation was rarely smooth. But despite these challenges, the spirit of decolonization burned bright. Section 7. Decolonization's Echo, a legacy that endures. Decolonization wasn't just a historical event, it was a seismic shift in global consciousness. It marked the end of an era where empires ruled vast territories and peoples without their consent. It challenged the very notion of empire and forced the world to confront the injustice of colonial rule. The voices of the oppressed rose in unison, demanding freedom and equality. The impact of decolonization continues to shape our world today. The ideals of self-determination and human rights that were fought for are still relevant and resonate deeply. The movements for racial justice, economic equality, and cultural recognition we see today are all echoes of that era. These movements are the modern-day manifestations of the same struggles. The struggle for true decolonization continues. It is a fight that has evolved, but remains rooted in the same principles of justice and equality. From the streets of Minneapolis to the occupied territories of Palestine, people are still fighting for the right to determine their own destinies. These struggles are interconnected, reflecting a global desire for autonomy and respect. The legacy of decolonization serves as both inspiration and a reminder. It inspires new generations to continue the fight for a fairer world, a reminder that the fight for freedom is never truly over, and that the pursuit of justice is a constant struggle. Each generation must take up the mantle and push forward, ensuring that the sacrifices of the past were not in vain.